A runaway slave stands trial to assert her freedom and the freedom of her daughters. They had fled their master and evaded capture for some time because the mother had spent most of her life as a free woman, so she knew how to pass herself off. They were only enslaved because the woman's husband had murdered the master's father, and so she and her daughters became slaves to pay off the life debt for the remainder of their lives, as the worth of the master's father was worth as much as all of theirs combined. This is Ancestoria, the desecration of humanity. While the first records of slavery can be found in ancient Mesopotamia, it is reasonable to assume that slavery has existed for far longer. When our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers, they were constantly on the move for food, and most had to keep strict population limits. When unfamiliar groups encountered each other, it would regularly result in violent deaths, and the defeated party would either have to retreat or be killed. The last thing they needed were disobedient mouths to feed. When agriculture and animal husbandry saw widespread adoption, they began to acquire an exponential amount of food compared to the workers employed. This gave incentive for a larger population. However, even though wars took place between two different village communities, a peaceful border was preferable, and so they resisted enslaving captured hostiles and instead exchanging them for captives from their own village. However, the same sensibility did not apply to nomadic raiders. They had no need to maintain peaceful relations, and so they slaughtered the males and likely enslaved the young women and girls. As villages grew into cities with stratified hierarchies, the need for peaceful coexistence and retrieving prisoners of war was seen in less amicable light. In the earliest writings from Mesopotamia, it is indicated that at least some of the slaves were kidnapped from the foothills of the Iranian mountains. They became livestock, and some were permanently blinded to discourage running away. Foreign slaves had their names taken from them and assigned new names to strip them of their former identity. Most were not allowed to marry, and their children were born as slaves. They were fully their master's property. They could be beaten, given away, sold, perform any labor, and even murdered, all within legal and social rights of the master. When society became based on monetary systems, people borrowed money against a pledge to work. If they could not repay the money, and once the allotted time for repayment had passed, the lender would own the borrower until they determined that they earned their lost money back. Oftentimes, these people would be slaves for the rest of their lives, and sometimes even their entire family would have to pay the price. The slave trade quickly became an important part of the ancient economy, and marauding tribes would raid villages and sell the captives to foreign powers. Entire markets would pop up in cities and towns for the rich to select the most desirable people and use them for anything and everything until their death. It became an institution protected by both society and law. However, slavery in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt was minimal compared to what was to come. Our ancestors were far from pure. An impressive history lies behind us with the greatest victories and monumental achievements. But it is also filled with unimaginable cruelty, and slavery is the worst example. Enslavement saw the worst treatment of humankind. All great civilizations are filled with darkness, and not all of those who have come before us have been virtuous. But we are never shackled by their attitudes and will continue to build a better tomorrow. This is Ancestoria, the history of our ancestors.